The first hand closed around Dr. Samara Ellison's upper arm before anyone told her she was being detained. The second came from behind, thick fingers locking around her waist and pulling her backward into the space between two uniformed officers. Samara did not scream. She did not twist free, though she could have. She simply planted both feet on the sun-warmed pavement and looked at the officer standing inches from her face. Officer Travis Rourke was broad through the shoulders, flushed from anger, and already breathing as though the confrontation had lasted much longer than 30 seconds. His grip tightened through the fabric of Samara's charcoal jacket. "Stop trying to take control of my scene," he said. "I asked you to review the security footage before arresting a 17-year-old, Samara replied. "That is not control. That is basic procedure." Behind her, Officer Dean Halberd pulled her right arm closer to her body. He was younger than Rourke and less certain. His fingers shifted twice, searching for a stronger hold. Rourke leaned closer. His face carried the satisfaction of a man who believed the argument had ended the moment he touched someone. "You're done talking." He lifted one tattooed forearm and pressed his index finger beneath Samara's chin, forcing her head upward. "Who's going to save you now?" Several people near the loading entrance raised their phones. A delivery driver stopped beside a stack of empty pallets. A cashier in a green store vest stood frozen behind the glass service door. Samara's gaze did not leave Rourke's face. "Take your hand away from my throat. I'm touching your chin. You're using physical force to intimidate a detained person while allowing an unsecured civilian to stand within reach of your weapon." Rourke's expression changed. The words had not frightened him, but their precision unsettled him. He glanced toward his duty belt. A large man in a leather motorcycle vest stood less than 3 feet away, close enough to reach the officer's holster. Rourke had not noticed. Samara had noticed the moment he approached. She had also noticed that Halberd's body camera was recording while Rourke's indicator light remained dark. Dean Rourke said without looking back, "Turn off your camera." Halberd's grip loosened for half a second. Samara felt it. So did Rourke. Now he snapped. Halberd did not move. The confrontation had begun 10 minutes earlier when Samara arrived behind Marlowe Square to collect her nephew, Dorian. The shopping complex stretched across 3 renovated brick buildings near the river filled with electronics stores, clothing boutiques, restaurants, and a private security office that controlled every loading entrance. Dorian worked weekends at Northline Electronics saving money for community college. He was quiet, careful, and so determined not to make mistakes that he sometimes arrived 20 minutes early to a 6-hour shift. When he failed to answer 3 of Samara's calls, she parked near the loading alley and walked around the building. She found him against a delivery van with 2 men blocking his path. One wore a black motorcycle vest over a sleeveless shirt. The other held Dorian's backpack open, while Calvin Mertz, Marlowe Square security director, watched from the loading doorway. A boxed dashboard camera lay on the pavement. "That came out of his bag," Mertz had said as Samara approached. Dorian's face was pale with anger. "A man in a gray jacket bumped into me inside the stockroom. I didn't put that in there." The biker holding the backpack laughed. "Sure you didn't." Samara stopped at a safe distance. "Step away from him." The men turned. The larger biker looked her over, then smiled. "Family. I'm his aunt. Place the bag on the ground and move away." Mertz stepped between them. "You don't give orders here. I'm asking you to preserve the scene. Nobody else should touch the bag until the police arrive." The biker dropped it at Dorian's feet. "We already found the merchandise. You handled the bag without gloves. Mr. Mertz is standing beside an open loading entrance, and the security camera above us has been rotated away from the door." Mertz looked up too quickly. That reaction told Samara more than anything he could have said. She had spent years teaching people to identify changes in breathing, eye movement, balance, and attention under pressure. Most deception was not revealed by dramatic gestures. It appeared in tiny involuntary choices: a glance toward an object, a protective step, a sudden interest in controlling who spoke next. Mertz moved closer. "You need to leave before you make this worse." "For whom?" The patrol car entered the alley before he answered. Rourke climbed out first. He greeted Mertz by name. Not professionally, casually. Halberd came around the passenger side and activated his body camera. Mertz pointed at Dorian. "He stole a $1,000 camera. My people caught him leaving the stockroom." Rourke did not ask who had searched the backpack. He did not separate the witnesses. He did not look at the camera mounted over the loading door. He ordered Dorian to face the van. Samara stepped forward once. "Officer, he is a minor. I'm his guardian for the afternoon, and there is surveillance footage inside the store." Rourke looked at her as though he had only just noticed she was there. "Back up. I'm already 6 feet away. Back up anyway." She took one step. "Please identify the legal basis for detaining him before reviewing the available evidence." The biker behind Mertz muttered, "Here we go." Rourke heard him and smiled. That was when Samara understood this was not merely poor procedure. The men were comfortable with one another. She looked at the dashboard camera on the pavement. The inventory seal was intact. A narrow strip of blue adhesive crossed the side of the box marked with Northline's internal receiving code. It had not come from a retail shelf. It had come from the locked storage area. Only employees and security personnel had access. Rourke moved toward Dorian with handcuffs. Samara said that item came from the secured inventory room. Ask who accessed it today. Rourke turned sharply. Are you interfering with my arrest? I'm asking you not to manufacture one. That sentence triggered him. He crossed the distance, grabbed her arm, and called Halbert forward. Now held between them, Samara could feel the situation narrowing toward violence. Not because she intended to fight, because Rourke needed her to. His feet were planted too wide. His center of gravity leaned forward. His right elbow floated away from his ribs while his hand pressed beneath her chin. Halbert stood close behind her left shoulder, his wrist bent and his thumb pointed inward. Samara could break both grips in less than 2 seconds. She had demonstrated the movement hundreds of times. Drop the hips. Rotate toward the thumb. Step outside the rear officer's base. Redirect the front officer's elbow. Move before either man understands that the structure of his grip has failed. But the people watching would not see structure. They would see a black woman moving suddenly, while 2 officers shouted commands. Rourke would call it resistance. He might reach for a taser. Halbert might reach for his gun. Dorian might rush forward. Samara kept her hands open. I am not resisting, she said clearly. Officer Halbert, your camera is recording. Please state the reason I am being detained. Halbert swallowed. Rourke answered for him. Obstruction. What action constituted obstruction? You kept talking after I told you to stop. That is not obstruction. Rourke pushed his finger harder under her chin. You think you know the law. I know the difference between a command and a lawful order. The people filming moved closer. Rourke finally noticed them. Everyone, back up. The biker nearest him stepped forward instead. You want us to move her. Samara turned her eyes toward Rourke's holster. Eye is inside your weapon retention zone. Rourke looked down again. The biker was close enough that his vest brushed the officer's forearm. For the first time, Halbert spoke. Sir, step back. The biker frowned. Rourke shot Halbert an angry look. I've got it. No, Samara said. You don't. Rourke's face reddened. Halbert's hand tightened again, but the movement felt mechanical now, driven more by fear of Rourke than by belief that Samara posed any danger. Samara lowered her voice. Officer Halbert, if he orders you to stop recording again, say the order aloud before you decide whether to obey it. Rourke shoved her shoulder. Don't talk to my partner. I's responsible for his own conduct. So are you. Yes, Samara said. That is why I'm standing still. At the far end of the alley, a gray passenger van slowed beside the loading entrance. Samara saw it but did not react. The van belonged to her Veterans Recovery Center. She had arranged to meet several volunteers at Marlowe Square before a fundraising event that evening. She had forgotten they would be arriving through the service road to collect donated equipment. The driver stopped when he saw the police car. Commander Elias Boone sat in the front passenger seat. He was 58 lean and carried himself with the economy of movement that remained long after military service ended. He had retired from Naval Special Warfare 6 years earlier and now advised state tactical teams on de-escalation and hostage response planning. Boone recognized Samara immediately. He also recognized the grip around her waist, the pressure beneath her chin, the position of Rourke's weapon, and the civilian standing within arm's reach. He raised one hand to stop the men inside the van from getting out too quickly. No sudden movement, he told them. Nobody approaches until we understand the scene. 4 veterans stepped onto the pavement. They wore jeans work shirts and plain jackets. None displayed military insignia. Yet their posture changed the atmosphere in the alley. Rourke noticed them and placed his free hand on his holster. Stay where you are. Boone stopped 20 feet away and lifted both hands. We'll stay here. One of the younger men behind him stared at Samara. Instructor Ellison, are you injured? The alley fell quiet. Rourke looked at Samara, then at Boone. Instructor of what? Boone's eyes moved to the officer's hand beneath Samara's chin. Release the pressure on her neck. I'm not asking for advice. No, Boone said. You're demonstrating why your department needed it. Rourke laughed once, but the sound had no confidence behind it. You military. Retired. Then you have no authority here. That is correct. Rourke appeared relieved. Boone continued. But I evaluated your tactical unit last year. Your weapon retention is compromised, your partner is trapped behind the subject, and you are allowing a civilian witness to stand inside your reactionary gap. Halbert looked at the spiker near Rourke's right side. He stepped backward, pulling Samara with him, creating space. Rourke turned on him. Hold your position. Halbert did not move forward again. Another man beside Boone spoke. She had taught us not to let ego collapse the scene. Rourke stared at him. Taught you what? The man's expression stayed neutral. How to survive people who mistake aggression for control. A siren sounded from the street beyond the brick buildings. Captain Orrin Vale's unmarked vehicle entered the alley, followed by a patrol supervisor. Vale stepped out before the car fully settled. I had received Boone's call with only 3 pieces of information. An officer was restraining Dr. Samara Ellison. Body camera shutdown had been ordered, and possible evidence tampering was occurring at Marlowe Square. The name was enough. Vale had met Samara 11 years earlier during a joint training program attended by tactical officers, military personnel, and federal protection teams. At the time, he was a talented but volatile lieutenant who believed every difficult scenario could be solved by applying pressure faster than the other person. During a simulation, he had slammed a role player against a vehicle after the threat had already ended. Samara stopped the exercise. Vale argued that his speed had protected the team. She made him watch the recording frame by frame. He had ignored the role player's open hand, stepped across his partner's line of fire, lost sight of a second doorway, and created a struggle where none had existed. She removed him from the course for the day. He accused her of humiliating him. She replied, "Humiliation is temporary. A bad decision made with a weapon is permanent." Vale returned the next morning and completed the course. Years later, he credited that lesson with saving both a hostage and a young officer during a domestic standoff. Now he saw Rourke holding the same instructor by the arm while pressing a finger beneath her chin. "Release Dr. Ellison," Vale said. Halberd let go immediately. Rourke did not. "Captain," she interfered with a felony arrest. Vale walked closer. "Take your hand off her. She's been provoking everyone since we arrived." "Officer Rourke." The use of his full name finally reached him. He released Samara's arm and lowered his hand. Samara stepped away, adjusted her jacket, and went directly to Dorian. The teenager was still facing the van, one palm against the metal door. "You all right?" she asked. "They said they're arresting me." "No one is arresting you until the evidence is reviewed." Rourke scoffed. "We found stolen merchandise in his bag." Samara pointed toward the boxed camera. "The inventory code indicates it came from secured storage." The overhead camera was manually rotated. Mr. Mertz's associate searched the bag before police arrived, and Mr. Mertz has not explained why a civilian wearing his security access key was allowed inside the loading area. Everyone turned toward the biker. A plastic access card hung partly concealed beneath his vest. Mertz moved toward the service door. Vale blocked him. "Stay here. This is private property. It may also be a crime scene." Mertz's confidence faltered. Rourke stepped between them. "Captain, this is getting out of hand because she keeps inventing theories." Vale looked at Halberd. "Is your body camera active?" "Yes, sir." "Has it been active since arrival?" "Yes." "Did anyone order you to turn it off?" Halberd glanced at Rourke. The silence answered first. Then he said, "Officer Rourke did." Rourke's face hardened. "I told him to stop recording private security information." "You told him to turn it off after you detained Dr. Ellison," Halberd said. It was the first time he had openly contradicted his senior partner. Rourke moved toward him. Vale stepped between them. "Do not approach him." The patrol supervisor secured Rourke's position while Vale ordered officers to preserve the store's recording systems. Mertz claimed the cameras had malfunctioned earlier that afternoon. The young cashier in the green vest finally spoke from the doorway. "There's a backup." Mertz turned. "Lena, go inside." She did not move. The insurance company installed cloud backup after the last theft. Mr. Mertz doesn't have access to erase it. Every face in the alley shifted toward him. Lena's hands shook, but her voice became steadier. "On made me turn the hallway camera away from the stockroom. He said it was part of a security test." "Where's the backup accessed?" Vale asked. "The manager's office." Mertz reached for the door. Two officers stopped him. Inside the office, the store manager signed into the insurance portal. The video loaded slowly, each second stretching the story. The tension tighter. The first camera showed Dorian carrying empty packaging toward the recycling area. A man in a gray jacket entered the stockroom using a keycard. He removed a boxed dashboard camera and passed it through the service door to one of the bikers. A second angle showed the biker walking behind Dorian and slipping the box into his open backpack while Dorian lifted a carton. The next recording showed Mertz repositioning the overhead camera. Then, Rourke's patrol car arrived. Before approaching Dorian, Rourke walked behind a delivery truck with Mertz. Mertz handed him a brown envelope. No one spoke when that image appeared. Vale turned toward Rourke. "Where is the envelope?" Rourke shook his head. "That could have been anything." "That was not my question." A search of the patrol car uncovered the envelope beneath the driver's seat. It contained $2,000 in cash and a handwritten list of dates. Several matched prior arrests at Marlowe Square. The cloud archive revealed the same pattern across months. High-value merchandise disappeared from secured storage. Young employees or customers were accused. Camera systems allegedly failed. Rourke handled the arrests. Mertz's private consulting company later issued payments to a business registered to Rourke's brother-in-law. Dorian was not an isolated target. He was the newest person selected to carry the blame. A's investigators separated the witnesses. One of the bikers realized Mertz had begun naming everyone involved. Panic replaced his earlier confidence. He shoved past an officer and lunged toward Samara. "You did this." His hand caught the lapel of her jacket. This time the threat was clear, immediate, and not protected by a badge. Samara moved. She rotated her torso, captured his wrist against her forearm, stepped outside his balance, and redirected his momentum toward the hood of the delivery van. The man's chest met the metal with a hollow thud. Samara controlled his arm without twisting the joint beyond its natural range. Her other hand stabilized his shoulder. The entire movement took less than 2 seconds. She did not strike him. She did not throw him to the ground. She held him until 2 officers took custody. Boone watched from several feet away. "Same pressure standard?" he asked. "The minimum needed to stop the threat," Samara replied. Rourke stared at her. Until that moment he had interpreted her stillness as weakness. Now he understood that she had chosen not to escape his grip, not because she lacked the ability, but because she had recognized the danger his fear could create. Vale saw the realization settle over him. "You asked what she taught," the captain said. Rourke did not answer. Vale gestured toward Boone and the veterans. Dr. Ellison trained naval special warfare personnel in close control, decision-making, threat recognition, stress regulation, and force discipline. She helped design the restraint standards used by our tactical division. The alley seemed to shrink around Rourke. He looked at his own hands, then at Samara. "You should have identified yourself." Samara's expression remained level. "I identified myself as a witness and as Dorian's guardian. That was enough information for you to follow the law. You made me look like a criminal." "No," she said. "The cameras did that." Vale ordered Rourke to surrender his badge, weapon, body camera, radio, and vehicle keys. Rourke's disbelief turned to anger. "You're suspending me because she has military friends. I'm suspending you because you accepted money from a security director. Ignored exculpatory evidence. Detained a witness without cause. Ordered another officer to disable a recording and used force to silence questions." Rourke looked at Halberd. "You're going to let them put this on me?" Halberd's face was pale. "I held her arm because I ordered you to, and I should have stopped." Samara turned toward him. Halberd struggled to meet her eyes. "I knew something was wrong," he said. "I didn't know how far it went." "You knew enough to hesitate," she replied. "I was afraid of what would happen if I challenged him. So you transferred that risk to me." Hun had no answer. Samara did not absolve him because he had eventually told the truth. Halberd had participated in the detention. He had held her while Rourke intimidated her. His body camera preserved the evidence, but his silence had helped create the danger. Internal Affairs suspended him pending review. His cooperation would be considered, but it would not erase his responsibility. Rourke Mertz and 2 members of the motorcycle group were arrested. The investigation reopened, 14 cases connected to Marlow Square. Some of the people previously accused had accepted plea deals to avoid longer detention. One had lost a college scholarship, another had been dismissed from a nursing program. A 20-year-old man had been rejected from military service after pleading guilty to misdemeanor theft, though the missing equipment had never been recovered from him. Samara joined a legal review team to examine each case. She refused the shopping center's offer to hold a public ceremony honoring Dorian. "I doesn't need to become your symbol of improvement," she told the company's regional director. "He needed your employees not to frame him." Northline Electronics offered Dorian his job back with back pay. He accepted only after the company agreed to create an independent reporting system for workers who suspected security misconduct. 2 weeks after the incident, Dorian sat across from Samara at her kitchen table while she applied ice to the bruising on her upper arm. He had watched the body camera footage only once. "You could have gotten away from them," he said. "Yes." "Right when they grabbed you." "Yes." "Then why didn't you?" Samara wrapped the ice pack in a towel. "Because Officer Rourke wanted movement. He needed something he could describe as resistance. But he was hurting you." "I was." Dorian looked down. "I almost ran at him." "I know. What would have happened? He might have arrested you. He might have used a taser. His partner might have misunderstood your movement. Everything would have become more dangerous." Dorian's jaw tightened. "So we just have to let people do whatever they want?" "No." Samara placed the ice pack on the table. Standing still was not surrender. "I was preserving evidence, protecting you, and controlling the one person whose actions I could guarantee." "Yourself." "Exactly." Dorian looked toward the fading marks on her wrist. "Were you scared?" Samara could have given him the answer people expected from someone who had spent years training elite military units. She could have told him fear disappeared with experience. It would have been a lie. "Yes," she said. "Training does not remove fear. It gives you somewhere useful to place it." Months later, the city held a mandatory retraining session for patrol supervisors and tactical officers. Samara agreed to teach only after the department accepted independent oversight and allowed community observers to review the new intervention policy. Captain Vale sat in the back row. Halberd attended in civilian clothes. His disciplinary review was not complete, and no one had promised he would return to duty. On the table at the front of the room lay a pair of handcuffs. Samara picked them up. "This tool does not create authority," she said. "A badge does not create judgment. Physical strength does not create control." She set the cuffs down again. "Pressure reveals preparation. It also reveals character." The room remained silent. She asked a young officer to join her for a restraint demonstration. Instead of showing how quickly she could escape, Samara showed where communication should occur before hands were used. She explained distance positioning, the importance of keeping civilians away from weapons, and the obligation of one officer to intervene when another allowed anger to shape the encounter. At the end of the session, Vale approached her. "I should have recognized what Rourke was becoming sooner." Samara gathered her notes. "You recognized it when the evidence became impossible to ignore. That isn't the same as preventing it." "No." Vale nodded, accepting the answer rather than asking her to soften it. Across the room, Halberd stood alone beside the chairs. He had submitted the messages Rourke sent after earlier arrests. Those records helped prosecutors establish the full bribery scheme. His cooperation mattered, but so did the moment he had placed his hand on Samara and obeyed an order he knew was wrong. He approached her carefully. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told her. "Which part?" "That I transferred my risk to you." Samara waited. "I thought staying quiet protected my career. It only protected him, and endangered everyone he chose next." Halberd nodded. "I don't know whether I deserve another chance. That decision belongs to the review board. What you do while waiting belongs to you." Outside the training room, Dorian helped a veteran adjust the brakes on a wheelchair donated to Samara's recovery center. He had begun volunteering there after school. He no longer described his aunt as someone who could defeat 2 officers with her hands. He understood that nearly anyone could create a struggle once anger took over. Samara's real strength had been harder to see. She had stood between fear and action long enough for the truth to remain visible. Rourke had grabbed her because he believed physical control would end every question. He had pressed a finger beneath her chin because humiliation made him feel powerful. He had looked at a calm black woman in an alley and assumed restraint meant helplessness. He never imagined she had spent years teaching some of the most highly trained fighters in the country that force without discipline was merely failure moving faster. Samara had known exactly how to break his grip. Instead, she allowed the evidence to break his story.